Several years ago, I was working in a restaurant, and it was my job to greet patrons with a greeting and pour them a glass of water. Well, one time while doing this mundane glass, I poured the glass of water. I said, "How are you today, sir?" And I looked up and I couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman. And I continued, "Ma'am, sir." And I just set the glass of water on the table and walked off. I was so embarrassed, but I couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman. That's what today's video is about, gender in Russian, but not in the way we think of it as man or woman, but every person, place, or thing in the Russian language has gender. But it's not how you might think of it. For example, tsvietok, which is flower, is actually a masculine word. And mashina, car, is a feminine word. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to determine the gender of every single word. I'm going to call out one or two of the major exceptions and give you tips of how to remember those. And then finally, I'm going to answer the question that every single student eventually asks. What do you do with masculine words that have feminine endings? Давайте начнем. Меня зовут Jared, и я делаю русский язык легким. Hey everybody, my name's Jared, and I make the Russian language easy. The first thing that you need to understand is that in Russian grammar, there are three genders: masculine, feminine, and the third, which in English we call neuter. Now, the gender of all words is determined by the last letter of the word. Masculine words end in a consonant. So take, for example, stool, table. It ends in a consonant, so it is masculine. Tsvietok, flower, the example I gave earlier, ends in a consonant, so it is masculine. You can see that it doesn't really have to do with the idea of how traditional stereotypical things might be masculine or feminine. I know we don't always buy into that today, but a flower historically was considered traditionally feminine, right? Well, it has nothing to do with it, generally. We're going to get to that in a minute here, but it's determined by the last letter. Feminine words end in an a, ya, or myaky znak, the soft sign. So take, for example, mashina, car. That ends in an a, so it is feminine. Neuter words end in an o or a ye. So take, for example, moloko, milk. It ends in an o, so it is neuter. Okno, window. It also ends in an o, so it is neuter. Okay, before we get to the exceptions, here's a few for you to try out. Televizor, television. Would that be masculine, feminine, or neuter? That's right, it would be masculine because it ends in a consonant. Okay, and what about the word for faith in Russian? Viera. Would that be masculine, feminine, or neuter? That's right, it would be feminine because it ends in an a. What about the word for word in Russian? Slova. Would that be masculine, feminine, or neuter? That's right, it would be neuter because it ends in an o. Okay, now I'm going to give you kind of the two major exceptions that you need to know here. And if you're a grammar guru or a Russian expert, I know there are a lot of different exceptions. I'm not going to go into all of those right now because it just overwhelms you. I'm going to give you the two main ones. And once you build a foundation and you grasp this concept, as you progress in your Russian learning, you can add more exceptions there. But the first exception I want to talk about is the myaky znak, or the soft sign. More often than not, this is a feminine word. But there are enough words that end in a soft sign that are masculine that you need to pay attention to it. When I'm learning new vocabulary and I see a soft sign at the end, I always kind of look up and I learn at the same time I'm learning the meaning in English. I learn, is it masculine or feminine? And I just think, okay, if it's feminine, it's the standard, I don't worry about it. But if it's masculine, I kind of train myself. Okay, this means this, and it's masculine. If you aren't sure and you're in the middle of a conversation, guess feminine. You're going to be right more than you're going to be wrong. But if you guess that 100% of the time, you are going to be wrong a fair amount of the time. All right, that was the first exception. Myaky znak can be masculine, but is usually feminine. Hey, you guys, real quick. If you're learning something, smash that like button. I'd appreciate it. Spasiba. The next exception I want to talk about are words that have masculine meaning, but have feminine endings. So let me give you the word for uncle. It's dyadya. You can see that it ends in a ya here. So technically it should be a feminine word, but uncle is, by its very definition, a man. It's masculine. And so in that case, it is a masculine word. If the person you're talking about is masculine or feminine, regardless of the ending, it's going to take the gender of that person. So here's another one for you. Papa, father. Obviously, father in real life is masculine because he is a man. So even though it ends in an a, it's going to be considered masculine. This leads us into kind of the one question that all students eventually ask. How do you put the correct endings on masculine words with feminine endings? Now, you may not know all the grammar endings yet, and that's okay. Just put this in the back of your head for right now because you're going to eventually ask yourself that. But in the accusative case, for example, we'll use accusative as the example, in the accusative case goes to oo. So if we wanted to say, I saw Sasha. Sasha is a very common name over in Russia for Sasha, a boy's name, but it ends in an a. And if we wanted to say, I saw Sasha, we would say, Я видел Sashu. We still put the feminine ending on, even though it's a masculine word. So that's the answer to that question. Okay, if you stuck around to the video this far, I want to show you something that's really kind of cool. You'll probably figure it out in the future, but if not, this is the little extra for sticking to the end. Look at this. Он, она, and оно. You probably know these as he, she, and it. But now that you know how to determine gender in Russian, can you see what's really going on here? It's the same root word, on, but for he, it's got the masculine ending. For she, it's got the feminine ending. And for it, it's got the neuter ending. That's really what's going on there. Pretty cool, huh? Okay, now that you know how to determine gender, you're ready to learn all the endings for all the grammar cases. Go watch this video right here. It's got a lot of tips and tricks of how to remember all those different endings. Спасибо и увидимся.